And then I will let people in. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited about today's webinar. We're going to let folks kind of start to file through. And we'll get going in any second. Well, more like 30 seconds, but and I'm going to put the bingo card link in the chat. And we'll explain the rules on how it all works momentarily. But while we wait for all the folks to join, if you want to let us know where you're from, where you're dialing in from, I'm actually dialing in from Buffalo. I live in Chicago, but my mom had surgery on Friday, so I'm here to take care of her. It's kind of good to be back home for a little bit. I haven't been back to Buffalo for this long in quite a bit. Ooh, we got some folks from Japan. I love it.
We were just talking about how much we love Japan.
Yes, planning a trip there and can't wait till we were just talking about Tokyo Disney. So okay, we'll get some more folks coming in. I'm seeing some familiar names. I love to see it. Oh, Australia. Ooh, Singapore. I love Sydney. It's been a couple years since I've been there, but Singapore is also on my list. All right. Ooh, Burlington, Ontario, Canada. Okay, all right. We're seeing we're completely global this time. I love it. Okay. Oh, and St. Louis, Missouri, holding us down, Julie. Appreciate that. I know George is on the East Coast and Rico is on the West Coast. So, and then again, technically I'm in the Midwest, so we have a good part of the globe covered. Okay, I want to get started just so that I can make sure that we give a lot of folks, our presenters, Rico and George, the most time to go through their amazing presentation and then enough time to ask Q&A. So if this is your first kind of insightful webinar, it's really great to have you here. My name is Brittany. I'm the CEO and founder of Insightful. And essentially just trying to really bring equity to coaching. I had a really great experience with my first coach. They helped me get my first VP of product role and increase my salary by $80,000 in like less than 12 months. And I want to bring that same type of experience because it was so transformative in my life to everyone else. So with Insightful, you take surveys, these 5-question surveys, takes you 1 to 2 minutes. Things like pets or the last argument you had, or like your, favorite food type, things of that nature. You earn tokens and then you get to redeem those for free one-on-one coaching. And then in this month, since we do these monthly, Rico and George, two of the coaches on our platform, are here to share a little bit about how they work and specifically around AI. So it's as simple as investing 15 minutes and getting sessions, $250 and upwards for free. So as you can see here, here's our two coaches, AI in action, how today's top designers and leaders are boosting their impact. And if you're new and want to join the platform, it's completely free. Feel free to use the invite code AI Action. And you'll get a couple extra bonus tokens as kind of a thank you for joining. So I want to first talk a little bit about webinar bingo. So get your custom bingo card. The link is in the chat and I'll post it again in a little bit. It's really simple. So you enter your email. So this is how I know how to follow up with you if you happen to be one of our lucky winners. 1 card per person, please. And it's as simple as just crossing off the words that the speakers say. And then, like I said, we'll follow up with the winners after the webinar. So this is an example of what this looks like. This is one from March. There's, of course, a free space in the middle, but just as folks are talking, feel free to cross them off. But this is a bit of an honor code. So don't prompt the speakers with certain things just to cross it off. So don't say, for instance, oh, how do you influence your boss in these types of ways? Or, how can you increase your executive presence? So, I would say play by the rules, things of that nature. So if you get a bingo, we'll give you 25 tokens. Double bingo, so an X, you'll get 50 tokens, and 50 tokens is generally enough to get at least one or two sessions from a couple of different coaches on the platform. Blackout bingo, which is every cell on the bingo card, and you can get a free 30-minute session with Rico or George. And then also Q&A. Put those Q&A questions in the chat, and then we'll also give you some tokens for that as well. Um, okay, I think that is mostly the end of my spiel. So I will stop sharing and I'll hand it over to Rico, George, whoever wants to get started, and we'll go from there.
Thank you,
That's
Brittany.
good.
Here, let me get the share going. Can everybody see that?
We see both your presentation and your calendar.
Oh, you see both? Okay. Oops. No. Just this one. There you go.
There we go.
Better?
Sounds perfect.
I was like, oh, okay. Okay, cool. Thanks for having us, Brittany. Really appreciate you setting this up for us. So we'll just jump right in. So I'm Rico. I was in corporate America for 20 plus years, building, scaling, hiring, mostly creative teams. You can see here, I started off as employee number 40 at Zappos, and I built the creative and content team there. And was at Netflix for almost 9 years. I built the Netflix Creative Studio there, which you'll hear a lot about how we use machine learning, AI, computer vision in today's presentation. And then most recently, I was the head of creative and UX at Outschool. And then I left there in 2023 to move into coaching full time. So here I am. Thanks for having me.
Hey all, I'm George. I'm a product designer and design leader by background. Um, my background has mainly been in product design at startups. So I kind of started off in the startup world at General Assembly, whereas an early employee and one of the first designers. Helped kind of launch their education, their online education business. Um, and as well as worked on a bunch of like internal tools to support their education business as well. After that, I worked at Chartbeat, where I started off as an IC and eventually went on to lead the design team. And that was where I became introduced to analytics, which is still an area of interest for me. And my most recent sort of in-house role before moving into being a consultant was at a company called TeamShares, where I was also first product designer and an early employee, and worked on various so 0 to 1 products, ranging from internal tools to financial products. And yeah, and right now I have been focused on freelance and consultancy, and also excited to be a coach on the Insightful platform. That's also where Brittany and I met. Yes,
Team shares, right?
at Team
Or
Shares. Yeah.
team. Okay. Cool. Our agenda for today, and one thing, we want this to be interactive, so we baked in some questions. But if you have any questions as we're going through this presentation, please don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. George and I will be monitoring, or you can even just come off mute. It's not too big a room to just come off mute and ask questions. So please feel free to ask away. I know personally I don't like talking at people. I like talking with people. So please feel free. And here are some of the topics we're going to cover today. So one, AI myths. So hopefully we're going to bust some myths with you today. Some AI tools and examples of how we've used it in the past, how we use it today, ways to kind of think about how to implement AI into your workflow, and perhaps as a leader, how to scale your existing team and business. We'll go over some final thoughts and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Sound good? Okay,
Let's do
so
it.
yeah, so AI myth busting. But first, what fears, concerns, thoughts do you have around AI? And would love to hear from everyone, kind of just drop it in to chat. Like, what are some of the things? Everyone's here, so I'm sure there's probably curiosity around it and how it's being used. But if it's like my teams in the past, there's always this concern of what AI may do to our industries. Perfect. So, oh, and I think we're going to address both of these. So, promise we didn't plant these people. So, the first one, the first myth is AI will take my job. And so, the truth behind it is AI will take some jobs. It's already taking some jobs, and this isn't anything that's new. So, I like to compare it to, and this is like the probably the biggest question I always got as a executive at Netflix, like, are you guys gonna, replace us? And that's never been the intent. But it reminds me of two other times in history that maybe you can agree or disagree. But when the printing press came out, so that allowed one person to do multiple jobs and allowed like newspapers and these things to scale. Photoshop is another thing, which arguably it took jobs or made design easier, and both of those things were things that people did not adopt, and some people did not adopt, and they thought it was going to ruin industries, but it actually helped move us forward. And so I look at this as another evolution of how we work. Things that are scalable, things that are rote, mundane work, work that now can be automated or done quickly using AI. Things like here we have listed here customer support, service automation, analysis and processing, repetitive admin tasks like data entry, things like that. So those things are what AI is starting to and can continue to replace. But the thing that AI cannot replicate, and this was stayed true with a lot of my teams, is our humanity, our creativity, our innovative thinking. AI still needs smart and intelligent operators to have smart and intelligent responses. So yes, some jobs will be eliminated, but it will allow us to focus on what we as human beings are good at and the work we're uniquely positioned to do. Storytelling, innovation, invention, blue sky thinking. And for me, those are often the most fun things to do at work. So AI is here to augment, not to just replace. Okay, next myth.
Yeah, so the next one is one that I added. This is one I hear a lot, both from designers and I think about designers ourselves, and I think being sort of like nervous that it will make us less intentional. So it is that um, AI will make us lazy and less critical. And I think, at least in my experience and from what I've seen from the people who are using it well, is that I think it is it doesn't have to. If we treat it like a collaborator and not like a crutch. So some kind of like tips that I have for for this are I think generally like starting with a plan, which includes like how and when you plan on using AI, and probably most importantly why. Being intentional about where and how you use it. So, and I think like recognizing places where maybe you're using it to speed up when actually you should be slowing down. Um, because I think because it is so easy to use, and because it can take on so many tasks. I think it's easy for the AI to, whichever tool you're using, to kind of take the front seat and for us to take the back seat. But I think it's important to make sure that's not the case. I think not, I think avoiding just copying and pasting. I mean that like literally in terms of if you're using it to help with writing or writing code, but also just more like figuratively. I think you know if AI gives you an answer, treat it the same way as if a collaborator on your team, gave you that answer. Look at it, with the same critical eye, and and maybe give the same type of feedback, you would to an AI, as you would to a coworker. And I think Rico mentioned this earlier, but I think really thinking about how it can augment you rather than replace you. So I think that can mean a few different things. I think it could mean like helping you make your it can help build on your strengths. So figuring out ways to make you even better at the things that you're better at. But maybe to fill in some gaps, especially in areas that are kind of like outside of your main area of expertise. So for me as a designer, I know a little bit about code, but I'm not an engineer, so it helps me kind of fill in those gaps. Uh, uh, the next one that I hear a lot from designers, and which I understand, is that that it's just slop, and meaning that that the output isn't good. And I think like all tools, it can and will often produce bad work, especially like the first time that you prompt it. But I don't think that doesn't mean it doesn't have value. So I think probably too often designers, including myself, look at the output and judge it as if it were an artifact that a designer would have created. And I think if you look at it through that lens, I think you'll probably be disappointed, and you might say, okay, like this isn't as good as what I could have done. This looks like a very junior person's work, etc. But I think there are a lot of opportunities, and which I think we'll kind of walk through some in a little while, for how it could be used, to not replace, what you're already good at, but to make your work better, and to make you more impactful. So some tips here. I think one thing that I and this may be something that I notice is I think many people, in an attempt to try to stay up to date, will try like every tool under the sun. And actually, in my experience, kind of like spending some time going deep on a few specific tools at a time might get you better results. You'll have time to figure out each tool's like strengths and weaknesses. And as mentioned earlier, like often, it's not a magic bullet where it will necessarily produce great results right away. It sometimes takes you giving it more context and feedback, for it to become more useful. And I mentioned this earlier, but again, I think really, thinking of it as an opportunity to help you amplify your strengths and like fill in your weaknesses.
All right. So those are hopefully address some of the myths that maybe some folks were thinking coming into this. But now we want to talk about tools that we use, examples from our past lives, present lives, etc. But even before that, would love to hear in the chat, or some people coming off mute, how are you using AI today? Perhaps different than the examples we talked about already. Would love to see how people are using it. And while that's happening, we'll mount it in the chat too, in case any questions or other comments come through. I'll go over some of my higher level ways that we've used it in the past. So conceptual design. So I led the team at Netflix that created key art. And one of the things, it's probably well known that Netflix created 15 to 20 images per title to merchandise that title. And movie posters often have a similar formula. So they use the same strategies to create interest for character development, mood, emotional response, etc. And we identified about 15 to 20 formulas that movie posters use. You can see one here, right? Like you can kind of define the characters and you can see like the use of negative space and things like that. So in testing and having to come up with 20 unique concepts, oftentimes we would see what our AI models would propose, and we would never use something that was just AI generated. We would always use a human aspect to polish it up, to give that human touch, to create that connection. Because oftentimes AI won't know how to use the right kind of imagery, the right looks, the right moods, things like that. Um, so human polish was always added. So in this case, this helped us scale up and be able to satisfy the needs of all the artwork for the year I left. We had 1,200 originals, plus we had some 50,000 licensed titles. So to generate that much artwork, we definitely needed to leverage machine learning and machine tooling. And so it still holds true today, whether you use Midjourney or any other AI image generation engines, you still need to give that human touch. For me, there's still flaws, whether it's design flaws, whether it's proportions, things like that, that the human touch is still necessary. So this is an example of conceptual design. And we were still hiring a lot of conceptual designers to handle all the titles, so it didn't cause us to scale back. And I know that was somebody's response impact on scaling down teams. Because our title count was scaling up, we still needed to hire people to do this work. The next example, and the themes for mine, I have 4 examples, is all about scale. So when you're in a leadership role, you really are thinking about how can you scale what your team does well and then leverage AI so they can focus on the important work. So here's another one, right? So production design. So this is how we automated our work creation. So if you know the ad space and you know entertainment, uh, you know that if you're placing banner ads, social, there's so many resolutions, there's so many aspect ratios, there's so many ways that you need to optimize title placement and things like that. And at first, we would have to hire multiple agencies to do this kind of work, but they couldn't keep up. And so we needed to find a way for us to be able to do all these things in an intelligent way, and we didn't want to hire 500 production designers to handle the volume of work that we needed. So could we have? Probably, but that's also not responsible in terms of spend. So we created an automated artwork tool that would find the image, identify the crop parameters, find the negative space, optimize for title placement based on the needs of the ad, the banner, the in-product placement, all those things. So, and because we were able to do this, our ads and our promotions on platform, off platform, were able to get more sophisticated because we could generate things like this here. We could essentially auto-generate a wall of artwork that we could then use in different experiences. So that was another way we used AI. And another way was we created an assistant editor. So if anyone knows anything about editing and watch time, to edit a 2.5 minute trailer from, say, a 10-episode season, you'd probably need to watch 10 to 15 hours of that season to make your different selects. So what selects are which shots, with actors, which shots for action, mood sets, establishing shots, things like that. So what we did was we used computer vision, machine learning, music, closed captioning, subtitles, all these things to create a Netflix assistant editor that you can now just query. So you could say, find me all the shots with Robin Wright, find me the car crashes, find me like the conference room or whatever. And instead of having to watch the editor having to watch hours and hours and hours of content, they now have the ability to access those things at their fingertips. And so what this did was it actually cut down an editor's time to produce work from days or weeks to maybe 2, 3, 4 days. So this helped immensely and also made our editors' lives easier. So, and they could focus on the thing they're good at, and that's storytelling, that's creating emotion, creating connection, etc. Now, there's lots of tools out here that try to do this, and a lot of tools like Adobe has it built in into their Premiere, things like that. Descript also does this, but nothing comes close to the human storytelling that the actual editors would do. So these things can help you find clips, find moments, find scenes, but telling a compelling story still takes a human editor. Any questions on any of this stuff? I feel like I've been talking a lot. And there's one more example that I have. So the last one is more in terms of customer service, but also I use this for my teams I would put in uh, all the feedback that I got for like 360s, peer reviews, skip levels, all those things. And it would help me identify themes, which I could then help this person turn it into action items. Much to like what people are doing now with customer feedback, they're going to collect that, they're going to throw that into AI to analyze any themes or recurring topics that come up, and then create an action plan around it. So that for me was super helpful. It wasn't around as much in my time at Netflix, but I definitely used it in my time at Outschool because it helped me parse through, dozens of dozens of feedback pieces and be able to go through it and analyze it relatively quickly. Cool. So these are some higher level scalable things you can do from like an organization perspective. Now, George is going to go into a little bit more tactics and how you can use these things for building products, etc.
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about how I've been using AI, you know, in different contexts. So, the first is as a designer, like in-house at a company. I'll also talk a bit about just how I'm using it for like consulting and personal projects as well. Um, so I put this in there just to kind of give like a bird's eye view of this is not a complete list of the ways in which I'm using AI. I hadn't really done this exercise before, but it's interesting to see, sort of, how I'm using it sort of, like end to end in my design process. I think also one thing that, from user research through prototyping and testing and the build process and then assessing results later on. I think what one thing that sort of jumps out is, I'm actually not really using it in the way that I think a lot of like designers fear that that the direction it's headed in is in terms of like coming up with the ideas. I think Rico mentioned earlier, that there's still, I think, a real need for humans in that process of going from either like a problem or like a high level concept that you want to execute to the actual execution. So kind of using it to, in various ways to support some of those like rote tasks, like maybe coming up with helping to like to write so research scripts early on, which often include like a lot of like boilerplate language, and then also using it at the end of the process to analyze data, um, which often took a lot of time and manual effort, and now AI, I think, it can be really helpful in helping to do some of those manual tasks quicker, so it can spend more time on the creative exercises, more time talking to customers and getting feedback, which I think is the reason why most people get into design to begin with. So go to the next slide. So I'm going to kind of just dive into a few specific like examples and places in different phases. So I think the first place is like early on in the process of working on a new product or feature is research. One tool that I found really useful is ChatGPT deep research for doing especially if I'm working in a new domain that's like a complex domain. So for instance, like recently, I worked for a company that's building software for 911 call centers, and that's not a world that I have any experience working in. So, using tools to help kind of research, that domain, research competitors, including what customers of those competitors, like and dislike about their products, allows me to quickly kind of get up to speed so that I can, start to like ask better questions during interviews and things like that. So, that's like one tool that I kind of use a lot but I don't often hear being talked about as part of a designer's toolkit. I'm sure many are using it, but I think it's just calling it out. Um, the other one is I mentioned this earlier, but yeah, I think for things like writing like text heavy documents like interview scripts, I think it's both I think helpful and to execute them more quickly, but going back to what I mentioned earlier in terms of using AI as like a collaborator, I think it's also been really helpful in helping me come up with questions that I might not have thought to ask, or like pressure testing an existing set of questions and asking what I'm missing. So again, I'm not like offloading that task fully to AI to do for me. I'm using it to try to make me a better user researcher in that context. Um, One other tool that I really love is a notebook LM for this for storing research notes or maybe any notes that you have or documents or videos or any sort of like asset that you have related to a project. It sort of creates this like living, breathing repository for research, which um, uh, I think is a really useful team, whether you're an individual or you're part of a team, to be able um, uh, to, to save insights from research or to go back and retrieve questions later on. Like one thing that's come up often for me is you'll spend weeks or months working on this large user research project. You'll put together like a deck with all of the insights, and well, two things happen. One is it gets relegated to like to Google Drive, and hopefully people look at it. I think often they don't. Um, uh, the other thing is that it becomes sort of outdated, or maybe the team starts to realize that there are things that are important, but that we didn't necessarily capture in that presentation, in that summary. So now I can go back and say, show me all the instances where somebody mentioned this topic, and it could pull it up. I could dive in and refresh the research. So that's actually a tool that I've become like increasingly excited about using for research. Um, so in terms of actually like designing things, there's two ways in which it really I think like transforms uh, my design process. So but before AI tools, the main tool people were using was Figma or maybe Sketch. Creating prototypes was very slow. Sometimes, if we had the luxury of maybe having like a front end team, we can create like code prototypes, or if we had some coding knowledge, but it would take time, probably at least hours, but maybe days. depending on the complexity. But often it would be like fairly low fidelity still. It would, the data would be uh, would usually look fake. It would be hard to to make it look real, and it didn't feel native. And I think as designers we often talk about like look and feel, but it's very hard to replicate the feel of like a web application, for instance, in Figma. So now what I find compelling about AI is creating interactive prototypes is like very quick. It can often take minutes or hours, especially if you're just kind of going for like a mid fidelity prototype. It's very easy to make the data look either to actually use real data or to at least create data that is representative of what the final product would be. So for instance, on the right, which I'll talk about in a minute, was kind of like, and this is like I chose like a random example, but like a pretty common one. This was a voice, sorry, a language selector for a for a tool, and but that had a somewhat sort of like complex use case where for different languages, different options were available. Um, just using AI, to pre-populate the languages. I think I said, include languages ranked in, by their usage in the United States from, in descending order. Previously I had to like research that, copy and paste it, try to insert into my prototype. So it's really useful for, I think, for not just creating the interactivity, but also like the content. Um, but yeah, so on the right, what I was trying to show is sort of like a typical flow is starting usually with a design. It could be in Figma. Sometimes I've uploaded a sketch, um, like a pencil and paper sketch. Bringing it into a tool. So for instance, like in this case, it was a tool called V0, which I have been using more often uh, for prototypes such as these of like simple, well, not simple, but like isolated components, and then bringing it back to Figma to kind of to 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 take it to last like 10% and to usually make sure it's aligned with a design system, color typography, iconography, etc. Um, so if you could move to the next slide. The other I think like huge area of opportunity for using AI for designers are for designers who are working on products that are very dynamic. So by dynamic, I mean either they're like a real time analytics tool that is constantly updating, even without like user input, which is kind of what I'm showing a demo of on the right. Or uh, I was working for a client that I think I mentioned was building a AI assisted um, call center software, and was actually able to, without a ton of effort, like build a prototype of a working call center where it simulated, different agents, answering and transferring calls. So, if you're trying to design an experience that is maybe more complex than just, simple sort of like um, a simple application where the user is maybe like entering and editing data. I found that AI was uh, like massively helpful. So actually, the example on the right was because I couldn't show some work that I just mentioned, which is still being worked on. But I actually took an example from I had mentioned I worked in analytics previously. I did an experiment where within like 15 minutes I created a pretty lo-fi mock-up of an actual product that I worked on, which was a real-time dashboard. so this was just kind of an example, but this is something that I really wish I had at my disposal when I was working on this product. And within minutes, it feels much closer to the actual experience than our design files did at the time. Go to the next slide. So, so lastly, I think one of the
George,
things I've been
George, real
excited.
quick, there was a question in the chat.
Oh, sorry.
One slide said that invest a little money to upgrade your AI and get tools. I would assume you can't really get too specific on which tools you choose from. The platform has pre-selected tools in the paid upgrades.
Sorry, I'm looking for in the chat. What was
So
the
assuming,
question?
right, like most tools will either plug into like they'll choose ChatGPT or they'll choose Claude or they'll choose some other model, right?
Yeah.
They usually don't let you choose which model you want. Is that right?
I think they often do, but yeah, I would say me as a non-engineer, might have a little bit of insight into which one might be the best. But and sorry, I'm not sure if this is what the question was getting at, but but often the better, more powerful models are reserved for the paying tiers. Um, and I found that, if you limit yourself to the non-paid tiers, like one of two things happens. Like either you're relegated to some of the models which are not as good. And if you're trying to solve like a hard problem, you might hit a wall, or you just like as I mentioned, I think very often the first few prompts don't uh, get you to where you want to be, and you'll run out of like credits before you get to something useful. And obviously it's kind of designed to be that way, so they want you to pay. Um, so I realize that's that not everybody can pay. That's also why, or is in a position where they can. But I think if you can, I definitely at least for me in my experience, it's been useful. And I kind of think of it as like an education budget for myself at this point. I think previously, I mean, I've paid for like a class like here or there, but now, like these tools can kind of teach you how to use them. That's kind of built into it. um, I'm also using it. I'm also using them for like paid work, so that helps. But I would almost like advocate to just kind of like choose one and maybe pay for it, as opposed to like trying to use like 5 or 10 and and going too broad. Um, oh, sorry, I don't see the question. So if I didn't answer the question, RJ, feel free to chime in. Um, Uh, so yeah, so the slide was just kind of walking through like a couple of examples of like functioning products I was actually able to build. I actually think this is a big opportunity for designers for previously who previously you know uh, were had to stop short of that phase. So they might have either an idea for something they themselves wanted to build, or maybe wanted to build a tool to solve some specific problem, either for themselves or a client or somebody else. But would um, would often be unable to. Um, Obviously, I think there's a limit for especially for a non-technical person such as myself in terms of what they can build, and I probably wouldn't advocate that somebody who doesn't have like coding experience build something that is like mission critical to a business. But I did think there's a lot of opportunity for tools that can add a lot of value and not be very risky. So for instance, on the left was a tool I built for actually in addition to um, uh, um, the freelance work that I'm doing. I've also been working on an e-commerce business and working with sort of existing team. And there was a need for a sort of a very specific type of inventory management system for the business. And we kind of looked into some like SaaS tools, and they were like very, very surprisingly expensive. And obviously, like kind of building it, with like an agency or something was kind of would also be very expensive. So I started with a rough kind of concept for what I thought it had to do, and was able, within a matter of a day or two, not back to back hours, was able to kind of build like a you know a functioning system, and in this case using ChatGPT and Replit, which is one of the tools that you'll see repeated a lot. That's kind of the tool that I've kind of gone deep on. Um, the project on the right was also for the same business. I I recognized there was a the team was not uh, very very data savvy, and even though Shopify has some pretty decent reporting features built in, um, it was not something that was really being used. So I kind of played around with using again Replit to build this tool that actually used the Shopify API to pull in actual product data. Actually, what's being shown here is like demo data. Um, and then it uses the Open AI API to do things like automatically choose the best visualization, based off of their query, or it suggests like a list of things. I think it's called like things to consider that help to like contextualize the data. So you know, trying to help people who aren't accustomed to looking at data be able to do so like more effectively. There's also some like built-in functionality around like asking like commenting and discussing data, which Shopify didn't offer. So yeah, these are just like two examples of things I've been playing around with building recently that I think are got me excited. I think about the possibility of these AI tools, for designers. Um, you know, I've like dabbled in code, but never got to the point where I'd be able to build something like this in any like reasonable amount of time. So I feel like it's kind of like supercharged my abilities to prototype, and even in some cases push me over the edge to actually being able to build, which is exciting. I think exciting for other designers as well. Final thoughts. Okay, I think I'm next on this one.
Yeah. Actually, so I might skip final thoughts because we only have a few minutes for Q&A. Or if you want
Okay.
to just do really quick highlight, George, just so we can leave room for Q&A. We have about 11 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah, I think I covered a lot of these. I think so I won't go too deep. I think what to touch on what Rico mentioned, I think while AI is inevitably going um, to uh, to mean the loss of some jobs, I think there's also going to be a lot of new opportunity for designers to help shape uh, uh, the user experience around AI. I think at this point, like all designers are now design engineers, and we should all be able to to build what we can design. And yeah, I'm kind of excited to see. I think this is going to really like spark like a rise in designers as founders. Um, so yeah, well, that's
And
my
just
final
really
thoughts.
quick, to piggyback on that, whatever you can imagine is the limitation. So AI is only as good as the user. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're not great at prompts and if you're not putting great data in, you won't get good data back. If you're not giving really good prompts, you won't get good prompts back. And those that embrace AI can thrive, and those that fear it might be left behind. It was same thing happened during the printing press, same thing happened during Photoshop. The ones that didn't embrace it, unfortunately, got left behind. AI will let you scale your skills and or your team. And I know we painted this kind of rosy picture. So one thing I didn't put in here that I wanted to mention is that one thing that I'm seeing with AI is less opportunity for, like, with a lot of these rote kind of data entry level roles being able to be automated, that takes away opportunity for someone just starting their career to take that on. So that is a downside, but to some of the things that George was talking about, it allows people like that who are just starting a career to maybe jump and leapfrog and go straight into making their own products. So appreciate you all. Now I'll start the Q&A, but hopefully that was useful for you. Hopefully you learned something new. But if you didn't, we're here to answer any questions you have.
So speaking of questions, Nathan got a head start. So we have a couple questions from him in the chat. Do you have any standard or boilerplate system or other prompts you tend to use across foundation models, ChatGPT, Claude, NotebookLM, etc.?
So it's the context, like for building a product. What is the context that, or Nathan, if you want to come off mute and give some color, that might be helpful.
Well, let's maybe give Nathan a little bit of time to maybe, oh, there we go.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I didn't expect to be speaking. Yeah, hi. In terms of context, I just generally, so I'm in the project management, cybersecurity, more of the bit pusher space and operations. I, but I'm finding like with generative AI, I'm able to appreciate and actually have meaningful dialogue with more different areas. Like you'd mentioned when you were doing the research into the 911 product. And it was just more of a general question. I I think to a point you'd made, and I think Rico may have reiterated towards the end. It's helping generalists be better generalists, and it can really help very highly able people like y'all in your particular experience, your domains. And I just, if you have anything, not to make me you, but if you have specific prompts or ways you look at it, when you're trying to figure out the wording or to get the ML model to help you build prompts, like if there's any, I've got a boilerplate system prompt I use in Perplexity and ChatGPT and Gemini that seems to work. That was a lot of words. Sorry. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't say I have like a consistent. I think a consistent thing that I use for like for all prompts. I think in general I found just kind of like the more context that I can give, the better. It's a pretty like simplistic way of approaching it. Um, I have experimented with having like AI like refine my prompts. So for instance, using ChatGPT to help write like a better prompt for Replit. Um, I mean breaking it down. Again with without like uh, testing it in like in a lab. I'm not sure I have any evidence that it's that it's like that it actually works better than if I were to just write it myself. But it seems to work. I think I read recently that uh, like having um, like often when an AI tool is struggling to fix like a bug that um, with each attempt it will become like increasingly like less effective, which I've kind of like seems to be the what I've noticed in practice. But actually, like one way of is um, to overcome that is to like to move out of that tool, and explain the context to another tool, and then have it, explain it kind of, back to the other tool. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure that's kind of what you're getting at, but I think for me I'm just kind of curious. So I do a lot of just like reading up on, like what are different sort of like things people are trying, what seems to be working. Um, but yeah, don't really have like a super consistent thing that I stick to. And when I try, it usually at some point it stops working. I try something different.
I might have an even more just like simplistic approach, and this is the way I craft all my prompts. And an engineer who was working on these things told me this: treat it like a baby. And how would you explain this to a baby? And then I take it a step farther, like how would I train this, like tell this to a baby or like a 5-year-old? And then how would I tell this to someone who's just starting on my team? And then I would say, ask me questions that will clarify the ask. So you're actually using AI to like see what is too vague and what is not clear, and then it'll ask you. And I've actually gotten good results from that. Now I'm not building any engineering models or anything like that. I'm using it for ideation. I'm using it for content creation. I'm using it for like innovation, like just as a thought partner. So that has worked well for me. So it's not a template, but it's more of an approach.
Oh, right on. Thank you. And for what it's worth, like the stuff I've tried to understand from Anthropic, and all the other archive papers that I've had the ML models explained to me because I don't understand it. It bears it out. I think this is it's a brave new world, and it's non-deterministic compute, and we aren't used to non-deterministic compute. So thank you guys.
I'm going to come back to Nathan's additional questions, but just want to get this one from RJ. I'm sorry this may sound really low level question, but can you say, when you say designer, can you please define designer? Being a designer seems either very specific or very broad.
Yeah, so there's designer is a very broad word. So there's product designer, which is like designing product experiences. There's UX designer who works on like the different user journeys. There's graphic designer. There's also key art designer, which like I talked a little bit about, who designs like artwork for either ad campaigns or movies. So it is a very general term. The thing that ties it all together though is oftentimes you're creating unique creative approaches to either technical or established problems, like whether it's a marketing campaign or a new product experience or some sort of A/B test that you're trying to create. It's somebody who's creating something that people will experience in some way, shape, or form. And that's the best way I can kind of like sum up the word designer. I don't know if you have any other thoughts. Yes, experience designer. The theme that ties it through is you're creating something for someone to experience, to either help them do something, experience something, um, to that effect.
Awesome. Okay. Do you have anything that you can share around product domain or good personas as your research assistant?
George?
And I can whoever wrote that maybe jump on the mic, and explain a bit more. I'm not sure I understand.
Question was from our friend Nathan. I'm not sure if you're
Mhm.
still, if you could jump off mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I may have made some comments. I don't know that I had another question.
Okay.
I've taken up a lot of time, so I want to share.
No worries. Okay, so we are right at time essentially. Maybe have a chance for maybe like one quick question if anyone has one. Um, Maybe I'll ask this last one to both Rico and George. If you had to choose one AI use case every designer should try this month, what would it be? Give
Mm.
everyone a little take-home assignment.
I would, if there's a product that you've been thinking about and that's been bouncing around in your head, I would challenge you to ask whichever model you want to help you start to solve for that problem. Because I'm all about that's the coach side coming out is progress is better than perfection. So if you have an idea in your head, it's better to start acting on it than just to let it sit.
I love it.
Yeah.
George?
Yeah, for me, I think similar, except that maybe even go a step further and actually, I'd say try to build something, even if it's something simple, and maybe start with kind of like if you haven't really dabbled in this, start with like a fun, simple problem. So like for instance, one thing I'm working on right now is like a simple tool to help my son watch origami videos, which he struggles to with with using YouTube while building origami. So just a simple sort of like origami video player, for him. I think that will force you to go through sort of all of the steps you need to go through in terms of like defining the problem, but then actually dive into solving it, and then you might have something fun to play around with at the end.
Awesome. Well, just want to thank you both again, Rico, George, for putting in the time and coming to speak today and sharing kind of your experience, both your past as well as your current experience with everyone. Um, Again, folks who are unfamiliar with Insightful, feel free to check us out, insightfulapp.com. And we do these webinars on different topics, essentially once a month or so. Some topics have been previously about ADHD coaching and some tips and tricks there. I think last month was about belonging in your workplace and how to show up authentic. There are some that are career focused. So yeah, there's a little bit of a gamut. It also shows kind of the variety of the types of coaches that we have. Leadership coaching, executive coaching, financial coaching. Um, so so hope to see you guys again, see you folks again on a future webinar and on the platform. All right. I'll let you all go. It's great to see you and enjoy the rest of your day and week. Thank
Thank you
you.
all. Have a good week.
Thanks all.